Greetings, petrol heads! Welcome back to Automation the Car Company Tycoon game. Yes, I got a new mic, and I don't have a pop filter for this mic. I did have one for my old one, not that I threw it away or anything, but it's just fixed on the microphone holder of the old mic. So I gotta figure out a way of getting that to work for this one. In any case, I am going to review the AAG Sabre today, which is built by James Brown, who also built the AAG Cutlass that won the fan build competition. So he says the Sabre is more of a entry-level GT car than a true sports car, and well, let's just see what it's made of. So you got longitudinal engine placement, as you can see, double wishbone suspension front and rear, and AHS steel monocoque with aluminum panels. This combination, because the chassis down here is is heavy, excuse me, and the panels from aluminum are light, this combination makes it so the center of gravity is relatively low. It should make for a good cornering. Aesthetically, the rear end is really nice and contemporary, but the front I think is a little bit underwhelming. It looks more like a 90s Opel Astra sedan or something like that. It's just not this sort of car you would associate with prestige at first glance, I would say. But maybe like this sort of look would make for a great wolf in sheep's clothing. So maybe it can convince in that regard. Now it's got the same 2.5 liter engine that the Cutlass 2.5 has as well, and that car won the fan build competition, so it's a good engine. Very nice torque curve, nice and low peak torque, peak power at 6600 RPM, rev limit of 7100 RPM. 179 horsepower doesn't seem like that much for a 2.5 liter engine in this day and age, but keep in mind that this is only the entry level version, and like it's not the sort of engine where they went ahead and squeezed every possible horsepower out of the available capacity. It's just not that sort of engine. And we got a 6-speed manual gearbox, plenty of overdrive, viscous LSD differential. What? 285mm rear tires on a car with 179 horsepower? That seems a little bit excessive, if you ask me. Also 255 front. And yeah, of course you gotta make the fronts wider as well if you're gonna make the rear tires gigantic, because otherwise you would get loads and loads and loads of understeer. Idler rims, at least 18-inch rims actually. That's very generous of you for an entry level trim. Vented discs, front and rear, but only one piston. It doesn't produce any brake fade, so it can't be that bad, but it's just a little bit unusual. Fully clad under tray is adequate. Wing angles don't matter anyway, because we don't have lips or wings in this car. Cooling airflow is sufficient. You also got a little bit of brake airflow. 4 seats, standard interior and infotainment, as well as standard safety, and all driver assists except launch control. That makes sense. Active sport springs, semi-active dampers, passive sway bars, and a relatively normal suspension setup, only that maybe slightly more camber than an average car, but nothing out of the ordinary. So 47.7 drivability is maybe a little bit lower than expected. 40.2 sportiness is good though. 30.3 comfort, 24.4 prestige, 50.8 safety, and economy is decent, 7.91 liters per 100 kilometers, and performance, it's running around the effort track, 6.9 seconds. So 6.9 seconds acceleration time and a track time of 128.68, which is fine, it's not bad. And as far as markets go, sport budget, light sport, and family sport. So yeah, this gets a significant desirability penalty because of its body. 21% penalty on the light sport category, which means this would be quite good in this segment. Like the competitiveness would be around 115 or something like that. Sport budget, it would be right around 105, 106 or something. And then here in family sport it would be about 90, 96, maybe 95 or so. So pretty good. And I can't really say there's much wrong with this car other than the tires. Like, I can show you one thing, okay? I'll put it back to the original tire width just after that. But if we go to 225 front and 245 rear, we get basically the same steering behavior. We get better drivability, slightly reduced sportiness, acceleration time would still be the same, and wheel spin would just be marginally higher. So yeah, the white numbers were the ones we were making with the narrower tires that I suggested. So we actually did get 0.1 more prestige out of that as well. Yep, stopping distance would increase by half a meter, but you could fix that with just some upgrades to the brake system, which you could afford because you don't need the money to buy these expensive big tires. There's a second trim of this too, the 3 liter. So now the grille is surrounded by chrome and we get some fog lights on the front. The rear is exactly the same, isn't it? And we get a 3 liter V8 in here, which also was in the AAG Cutlass, the 3.0 version of that to be precise. And it is a good engine with a very flat torque curve, 5 horse per cylinder, and decent economy. But only thing I really would like to mention at this point is that while the 2.5 liter engine would certainly make sense and be realistic for a real car, this one I think not so much. Why? Because 3 liter engines are like very versatile engines in today's like in the way car manufacturers are building them these days. What I mean is 3 liter engines have basically 2 roles. Either they're sort of for economy cars, if they're turbocharged and tuned to like 270 horsepower or something like that, in which case, you know, they're probably still gonna make more economy than this thing, but also produce lots more power and torque. Or if you're gonna go for a naturally aspirated V8 that's got 3 liters, then just you would expect this thing to rev to 8 or 9,000 and to make plenty of power. This sort of engine setup would probably not really work in today's age anymore. Because if you think back a couple of years, the E46 BMW 330i or CI, no matter which one, that had a 3-liter naturally aspirated inline 6 that made 231 horsepower. So in 2015, 205 horsepower out of a naturally aspirated 3-liter engine doesn't seem like much, given that this has tech that the BMW didn't have, and it has 5 horse per cylinder rather than 4 like the BMW. So overall, it is a solid tune, don't get me wrong, just maybe a little bit underwhelming for what people expect. 6-speed manual gearbox, viscous LSD, we've seen that before. Medium compound road tires this time, and okay. Adequately sized tires. Steer rims. Now, is the V8 supposed to be the cheaper version of the two? We do have still one piston vented discs all around. Braking distance is getting kind of bad at this point. 40.1 meters is 40.41 meters, excuse me, is, you know, for a car in today's age, it's average at best, maybe a little bit below average even in terms of performance, not in terms of stopping distance. Like in that way it would be more than average. But yeah, I mean, if you just go for like, see, 4 pistons front, and it would reduce the stopping distance by a full 6 meters and increase drivability, sportiness, comfort, and safety. While it adds about $240 to the cost, I think it might be worth it. And 6 meters of stopping distance, like that really does make a difference. Especially when you're about to crash, and you know, 6 meters, like taking 6 meters or more in order to stop, that can oftentimes get you, that can really get you into trouble, and you might crash. You might crash where you, like in a situation where you wouldn't crash if you had these brakes instead. Fully clad under tray still. Cooling airflow is more than enough still. Everything here is still the same, standard interior infotainment and safety, 4 seats and all driver assist except launch control. Air springs, adaptive dampers, semi-active sway bars, and slightly softer springs and dampers. Now the interesting thing is, why does this have air springs and the inline 6 has active sport? Is the inline 6 more of a sports car and this is more of a, you know, long distance cruiser? Uh, 129.03, so slightly slower around the track, but that is not a big difference, and you won't really notice that when driving these cars on the road. The acceleration time is slightly better, top speed is higher. Fuel economy, surprisingly, is just barely better than on the 2.5 liter, and comfort? Wait, 30.3 comfort. What's the comfort? 2.5. Oh, 30.3. So both of these cars are exactly as comfortable, and the V8 is slightly faster in a straight line. The inline 6 is slightly faster around corners. The V8 is more prestigious and slightly more economical. It's also heavier. It is less competitive in these segments than the 2.5, surprisingly. And it is also slightly more expensive, but I think this would be, like, overall the Sabre as such would be realistic to build, but you would have to change a few things. Maybe turbocharge this V8 and bring it up to a power level that is, more suitable for, I don't know, European competition or something. And also, I don't understand why the 2.5 liter has active sport springs, and the 3 liter has air springs. Also, obviously the tire choice on the 2.5 is interesting, and it's kind of funny to see how both of these cars have quite different approaches in some areas, but they make very similar results. So in the end, you'd end up competing with yourself on the market, especially with a similar price tag as well. This is 24,570, and how much was the other one? $22,000. So this is a little bit more than $2,000 cheaper. Honestly, I don't know which one I prefer. Because they're so similar. Like, that is the problem. Like, how do we make people choose? What is the main argument that you bring to the table, to convince people to buy either the 2.5 or the 3 liter? They are just, they're very similar cars. They're good cars with a few weaknesses, I guess. I hope I pointed them out adequately. So, but of course, guys, leave me as much feedback to this car as you can in the comment section below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like or a comment. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.